Hi everyone, welcome to my next video. It's all about the Bee Gees Horizontal. This is the album, and this was these are the different versions of the albums. This came out in 1978. This is the original 1968, and I think it's not a big departure from where they were on the first album, but there's a lot more Robin now, I'm happy to report, because I'm a big Robin Gibb fan. Robin and Barry, as you may know, are always kind of fighting for the spotlight, and you know, it culminated in a breakup. It was that serious in 1970. But for this album, until the end of the decade, so 3 albums in total, 3 masterpieces, Robin is actually in charge, if you like, or there's more balance anyway between Robin and Barry Gibb. What that means is the songs are a little bit more melancholy, which is a very interesting thing, which I will talk more about. The songs are... There's quite a range of music here. By the way, this is the back cover. It's very 1800s. Which was quite fashionable at the time to do, and it goes, you know, from songs that are very quiet and very earnest, because Robin is a very heartfelt guy. Songs like "And the Sun Will Shine," "Really and Sincerely," "Birdie Told Me," "Daytime Girl," "Horizontal," and yet it's punctuated by these really kind of hardcore attitude songs like this one, Lemons Never Forget. By the way, this song was covered in as recently as 2008 by a progressive rock Californian called Neil Morse. And I believe originally it was a progressive rock song. It's got that cocky attitudes and self-aggrandizement. What it was doing, what the lyrics were trying to do was poke fun at the Beatles' Apple label, but all in good fun. So when they say Apple is a fool, but lemons never do forget, they're actually referring to the Apple Record Corporation that the Beatles started. It was a brand new label at the time. But what it does for me, it reminds me of the friendly rivalry, the professional and healthy rivalry that existed in the 60s with all artists. There was no animosity or anything like that. Because in the 60s, there was a feeling you are all in it together. Motown probably served the best example of that, where they truly work like a family. I actually just recently watched a doco on Motown. I was amazed how they had team meetings, just like Ford, because Ford was from the same city, Detroit, and the head of Motown actually worked for Ford before he started the Motown label, Berry Gordy. And they would all come in together to have meetings, and it was extremely democratic in those days at the Ford motor vehicle plant. And at Motown, what that meant was everyone would have a say, whether you're another artist or whether you're the accountant, it didn't matter. You all had a say about whether you like that song, you like that title or not, you think it's going to be a hit, or or whether they should tweak something specific, and you would have that voice. It was a real family. It wasn't like a factory, but it employed some of the best practices of a factory, where the people who were best at songwriting would songwrite, and the people who were best at performing the songs would perform the songs. There was no animosity. It was really good, healthy, professional rivalry, and I think that's why the 60s was really such a golden era. One of the things that made it so. So Lemons Never Forget is a really, one of those real rock iconic songs from the 60s, and has been covered in the 90s. Can't remember the name of the band, but it is definitely one of those heavily covered songs. I'd like to play, it's also a good song, Really and Sincerely, but This Is World. This was their hit on the album. minor hit though. I'll get to the major hit in a moment. World is, according to AllMusic, Donald A. Guarishko described the song as a thoroughly psychedelic ballad worthy of the Moody Blues. Wow, finest similar efforts. The original promotional video for World is black and white. So yeah, they did promotional videos. They even did promotional videos in other markets, but exclusively like Germany. Quite a lot of songs, and sometimes they would make more than one video too. So they were definitely a big pioneer of the video. I think Spicks and Specks was actually the first non-movie video clip. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. Write in the description below. I mean, in the feedback comments section below. I would like to know if anyone can recall a song that wasn't from a movie, but was a real video clip. It has been cited, Spicks and Specks, as the first one. The big hit on it is Massachusetts. Now they're no longer ordinary people. As their song goes, ordinary people living ordinary lives, they were not. Massachusetts was a massive hit, and it deserves its status as one of the most melancholy ballads of all time, most evergreen and lush songs, most evocative of emotion, of human emotion. That song doesn't take a genius to figure out what it's really about. That song is about, it's about human emotions, okay? We've all been, when we were younger, I know I've been to parties and been, to camps, and it was so much fun. You're in another world, everyone laughs along with you and everyone loves you. Everyone's in it together in a beautiful, loving kind of event. But then that party ends. And when it ends and you contemplate going home, that deep solitude that you feel, that's the exact sentiment that Massachusetts expresses. So that particular song, the character is from Massachusetts. He's going home to Massachusetts, but he's actually in San Francisco, probably at the Monterey Pop Festival or any number of pop festivals that they had around that time. Monterey just happens to be the most famous one. So I love how you can relate to that. Anyone can probably relate. Anyone who ever had a good time and lamented the end of that. So, and I'm sure at the end of the 60s, people really could lament as well, especially when Charlie Manson came along and the party really was over. Couldn't hitchhike, you couldn't have a Woodstock anymore, not in that same innocent, free-spirited way that you could once upon a time. Now I'd like to play some, I'm going to pause it now so I can change discs and play you. I want to play you some of the bonus cuts that come from the 2006 edition. Here it is, by the way. I'm not necessarily advocating you ever buy this one, but this album, if you can get the vinyl, my God, that is super, super, super. Have a look at that. Okay. But in here, you get pictures of the Bee Gees outside and in concert as well. How good is that? Be right back. Welcome back. Now I'm going to be playing some more great tracks that are not on the album, but reveal a lot about the band. I want to also show you the alternative cover. Another alternative cover for the album was this one. It's basically a mirror image of the Bee Gees, and it's a different photo. A mirror image reversed. And don't you just love this cover? This was actually used for one of their singles. Very psychedelic, they were obviously tagging along the whole psychedelic and hippie movement. And they did a great job, and this is what this song is alluding to. Mrs. Gillespie's Refrigerator. It is a drug reference, I believe, that title. And it was covered. Do I have that information here? No, but it was covered as recently as the 21st century. It's been covered many times. And This is done in 1968. The album came out in January 68. In 1969, Johnny Young wrote what I believe is the answer to this song, the comeback, if you like, the retort, The Real Thing. It was produced by Molly Meldrum. It was so melodramatic, like this song is. It has all these sound effects in it, and like children's choirs. It ends in an atom bomb blowing up at the end of that song, produced by great guy Molly Meldrum, very famous and very popular here in Australia. He big talent scout in the 70s and had a show called Countdown. He basically kickstarted the careers of ABBA and to some degree Andy Gibb as well. And he discovered a lot of talent, a lot of big names, John Paul Young. This song is very melodramatic, not very hard rock. It's actually more acoustic than anything. Got the acoustic guitar going. I'll let you hear it for yourself a bit. What you can hear is Robin's strong voice as well. What I love about Robin, he's not what most people think. He's a rebel. He's a real rebel, and he's described himself that way. But he also is a very, very, very talented musician. He's got the strongest voice of any one of his peers, I would say. An operatic voice, that's why he can go very high. Ironically, he never really liked to rehearse for very long or even master an instrument. He was a fantastic guitar player, however, and a fantastic piano player, but he only played it in his studio to record his demos. You do see him on the Ed Sullivan Show maybe once, just pretending to play a piano, but that's just his shyness. He actually is a very talented musician. I wish, before he died, that he collaborated with Ray Davies. They're both of the same kind of people. Both love England. You know, they feel it in their heart, in their blood. And I think you can't get a more consummate British songwriter than Ray Davies of the Kinks. And I think this whole album is a bit Kinks-ish. Another song that on here is called Harry Braff. It's a little bit like the Kinks' Dandy. It's this throwaway song. It's kind of silly, but they do it anyway because that was the trend in the 60s. Let's do it. Doesn't matter if it's silly. Let's just do it, put it out there, and people bought it. You know, that was the free-spirited nature of the 60s. They do Harry Braff. It's that same kind of Kinks song. Now what you're listening to is Deeply, Deeply Me. Robin is totally having a lot of fun here. He's got this Indian kind of Raja tune here. You can almost be fooled into thinking it's a little bit country maybe, if you haven't heard that kind of music before. But actually, this stuff was hot stuff in the 60s. This could have been a song on the Revolver album by the Beatles, I believe. The innovation is amazing. And going back to the Kinks again, the Kinks actually popularized the Indian sitar in pop music through their song See My Friend. So I'll just let you listen to it. Other songs on the album, And the Sun Will Shine and With the Sun in My Eyes. With the Sun in My Eyes was covered by Sandy Shaw, and it really suited her. Very, very epic song, quite dark. Hello, Maggie. This is my cat just saying hello. Okay. Now, come off you go. Off you go. Woo! Don't knock the phone over. Oh. And the song And the Sun Will Shine, I think, was also released as a single. It was actually. I have some interesting information. In the same year, former Manfred Mann frontman Paul Jones recorded the song and released his version as a single, backed by his own song, The Dog Presides. It says a lot when Bee Gees get not only covered, they get covered on an A-side of a big name like Paul Jones. Not B-side, but A-side. What's interesting about that track was Paul McCartney was on that. Yes, he was on the Paul Jones version. He was on the drums, Jeff Beck on the guitar, brilliant guitarist Jeff Beck. And Paul Paul Samuel Smith of the Yardbirds on bass and Nicky Hopkins on keyboards. Produced by Peter Asher from the brother of Jane Asher, who Paul McCartney dated, from Asher and Gordon. Sorry, Peter and Gordon, rather. What am I talking about? Peter and Gordon, and of course Paul McCartney donated a few songs to those guys. Yeah. So that's quite amazing. Now, Birdie Told Me is an amazing song. I don't think it was a release, at least not in England or, Australia or America, maybe some obscure markets. But interestingly, it was covered by a Philippines band called The Hijacks. So, and exclusively released in the Philippines because they were not popular around the world. I also, probably one of my favorite songs, or underrated songs, is Daytime Girl. Daytime Girl has this moody blues kind of melodic quality folk quality that you just remember for the rest of your life. From the first time you hear it, it is that compelling. What else can I tell you about it? It's lush and it's sublime, it's moody blues, melodic folk. Perhaps what the Beatles aimed for a few times as well, like on the White albums, Blackbird and Long, Long, Long. Also, this is a Christmas song, by the way, which is very rare. The Bee Gees didn't do many Christmas songs. It is a bit different. Another song is nice little psychedelic rocker, Out of Line. It's playing now. This is a single that came about the same time. It came out about 2 singles after World, but it was still in the era of this album. Was never released. You know the song, it's called Words. Ronan Keating covered it, and it has been covered. Rita Coolidge has been covered endlessly, and everyone knows it's the Bee Gees. And the B-side is Sinking Ships, another like Herman's Hermits kind of psychedelic little ditty. Very romantic, very, very, I don't know what you call this kind of song, but it's very, very show-tuney, I think you might want to call it. And yes, what's interesting to know is that I remember an Australian interview with the Bee Gees in the late 1990s. Barry and Morris were arguing about which single came first. And I don't even remember who said what, but whoever said World came out first was right. World came out before Words. It's very hard for the Bee Gees. It's very hard for even me, to keep up with all of their releases because there's probably about 100 singles. And speaking of that, I actually want to come to rest about what is important and what is not important with these videos. So I will only talk about albums that were legitimate new release albums and compilations that were significant and nothing else. And of course solo albums is a real treat for me. I love their solo albums. Have to get into their solo albums. But other than that, I don't want to get into certain things that, are not essential, because I want to set the record straight and also report on each album in the order that they came out. All right, so that will be good. By the way, something I read, I didn't know this, but the song Words, it reflects some mood. This is actually what Robin Gibb says, I think in about 1989. Words reflects a mood. It was written after an argument. Barry had been arguing with someone, I had been arguing with someone, and happened to be in the same mood. The arguments were about absolutely nothing. They were just words. That is what the song is all about. Words can make you happy, or words can make you sad. I think there's something about that. I mean, and it's like, all these words, right? These guys aren't exactly poets, although occasionally they write an absolute gem of a lyric. And I think you can say about that with most bands. But when you hear it in the context of the music, that's where the real art is, isn't it? It's just amazing. It's only words, but the same words can mean so many different things and, bring light to so many different kinds of emotions. The B-side, Sinking Ships. It was an unusual thing for them, and it featured solo vocal lines by all three Gibb brothers. I don't think that ever happened before or after. Interestingly, Sinking Ships was released in Germany, as an A-side. Germany is just one of those countries where a band like the Bee Gees would exclusively release singles that were ignored in other countries. Another song I believe that was released was on their next album called Swan Song. This song is Ring My Bell. And what I love about this song and what I think is significant is it's soulful, very soulful, like a couple of years earlier they did November's Rain. It's got this sunshiny pop quality that was rarely there at the time until the Bee Gees sort of came along and did it, and Rascals and things like that. Tommy James and the Shondells, maybe the Grassroots and the Box Tops. They were white bands who would interpret soul music in a kind of a sunshiny pop way. This is 1968. You've got to appreciate, by the 70s, everyone had a song like Ring My Bell. Bands like 10cc and Dr. Hook would do it, but then even the Isley Brothers did, sweet, lush, harmonic songs like this one. That's the kind of decade that it was until the New Wave movement, I suppose, at the end of the 70s. What more can I say? This is Sinking Ships coming along now. Very kind of silly, but psychedelic. Sound effects used as percussion. Very interesting. And that's what I love about this album. I love the sheer variety. Look how much variety I've just presented to you in a few short minutes. 23 minutes, in fact. Well, these days, you listen to an album, after about 2 minutes, you know exactly the rhythm, the beats, the melodies, just by pigeonholing it in a certain kind of music, you know exactly what the rest of the album's going to sound like. It's all programmed, isn't it? Well, that wasn't the case ever with the Bee Gees or the Gibb brothers. So I think that is all I can really say for now about the Horizontal album. It's an absolute masterpiece, but I think they were only leading up to a crescendo by the end of the 60s, so I can't wait to get to that. But for my next video, I'm going to be talking about their third international album, Idea. Boy, oh boy, was that jam-packed with musical ideas for the 60s musical landscape to enjoy and devour. Catch you then. Thank you so much for watching.